Hi everyone. Right, I was recently asked a question about the Book of Samurai series, and it just led me to make this video. So basically, the question was, they were saying, Anthony, there's so much Japanese in it. Do I have to remember all of this Japanese? You know, what do I have to do? And I thought, well, I better explain why we've got that, why we have got where we are. So basically, when I was obviously in Japan, studying in Japan and doing everything, when we're looking through English translations with Japanese people, they're like, you know, they're not saying the translations are wrong, but they're like, okay, but there's this kanji and this is a bit like this and this word actually means that. So if you have some of the ideograms, some of the kanji, and you have some of the Japanese words in the text, it starts to make more sense. So for example, a non-Japanese word that appears in text is samsara. So you're like, a lot of people in England know about samsara. So you're like, okay, instead of just saying the cycle of life and death, you say samsara, put the ideogram, the cycle of life and death. And people go, oh, okay, we've moved into a Buddhist realm, we've done that. Or instead of using the word infiltrator, you can be like shinobi no mono, ideogram, infiltrator, and people are like, ah, okay, the ninja, we're there. Or for example, yin yang. So people don't always translate yin yang as yin yang when they do it. They say, oh, the negative aspect. And you're like, so it's bad. And you're like, no, negative as in a photograph negative, not negative as in bad. So, you know, and that's why yin yang has now become very popular in English, because it's sort of like you understand through just the concept of what it means. So what I did is during these, what we made sure we did was to add 3 layers of information: the ideogram, the Japanese, and the English. So if you read it at layer 1, you can just read the English. If you read it at layer 2, you can start to see, okay, well, it's the same word here. They've used monomi, which means scout, in this one, and they've used monomi there, but they've used shinobi there. So that means that's a close scouting man, and that is a far distance scouting man, and you start to see the difference. So it starts to bring a bit more depth to it. And for third, you can start investigating the ideograms and be like, okay, now I understand. Now I'm starting to get it. It's not in Japanese, of course, it's translated in English, but it gives you that extra bit of, that extra layer of understanding. Because so often when you read different translations of the same text, you're like, Like if you look at Miyamoto Musashi's Gorin no Sho, I only realised the other month, it's like he's talking about Ashigaru at one point, and you're like, okay, so, and then that puts the context and about the swords, and you're like, all right, so now I understand. But before, in the translation, the word Ashigaru is not there, it's just like soldiers and warriors, and you're like, okay, so soldiers and warriors is a correct translation. But when you put the word Ashigaru in there, it starts to get a bit of depth, and then you can see the ideograms, and you're like, okay, now I see what Musashi is talking about. So that's why I've put that in. I do have a friend who loves translations to be literal, and so but that actually skews the meaning. Actually, literal translations don't give you the correct meaning. So because English, people forget that you've got to adapt the English to get the connotations in the brain. So somebody was originally writing, and they wrote things down, and that then goes through time, and then it gets translated. And those English words you use are all very important, because the next step is that for every generation, each word has different connotations. So you've got the connotations of the original author, and you've got to translate that, not physically translate, you've got to translate the essence of it into the connotations of the mind now. So it's a difficult one. So that's why I did it in this style. And I've noticed a lot of authors are starting to copy my style now. You can start to see they're putting more Japanese in, getting the brackets in, getting this, they're following the Cummins style. We're going to call it the Cummins standard, shall we? So that's just a quick explanation of how to understand the Book of Samurai.